Alright guys, welcome back to the show. We're getting a little chat here about Buffy the Vampire Slayer once again. This is Season 4, Episode 7, entitled The Initiative. It's about dang time we have came across the Initiative in this series. It is probably, out of all the Buffy series is up to this point, I know I'm talking about it like it's happening right now, but we're just going through the classic stuff here, and we're just hitting it really with fresh eyes for the first time in probably 15 years. I'm sitting down to watch this again, and I'd forgotten just how slow a start this season was. Just any other season, you found out fairly early in the first couple of episodes what the big bad was going to be, or the big main thing, the big main problem of the series was going to be. And of course this one here, the Initiative, is a huge part of it, but I'm pretty sure there's something else on there that I've completely forgotten about. But the Initiative itself, these soldiers running around Sunnydale and the campus, is just, for me, it has been a frustrating run waiting to find out who these guys are. Taking 7 episodes to actually get a look inside this place and find out who's involved in it is just, crap. But again, having said that, there, with the readjustment in season 4 from losing Cordelia and Angel and whatnot, they wanted to do a bit of fresh character building, especially if everybody went out of their high school and going to university and whatnot. So I do get it, but at the same time, frustrating. So at the beginning of this episode, we see Riley. Finally, he's getting more screen time at this point, and this is the episode where I do remember it the first time. I'm pretty sure I've probably said it in this podcast before, but I do remember, I had remembered what Riley was going to be going into this series again. And for me, it's had it exactly the same way it did the first time around, because you do get to see him in the military role by the end of this episode, very swiftly going on it, maybe. For me, no harm to the man, but I just cannot take him seriously whenever he's posing as a teaching assistant for Professor Walsh, and he's your average sort of, I was going to say teenager there, but a guy in his early to mid 20s, and he's just, he's just your average Joe, more or less, passing himself off as that there. But whenever they get into the Initiative in this episode and he switches over to that, soldier, and there's one point where he's leaving to go out, and he gives this look towards Professor Walsh. She's part of the Initiative as well, and he's got the hard man look on his face, where he's got the eyebrows down and he's very serious and whatnot, and he's going by, and he gives her this look as if to say, right, we're going to kick some ass here. And I just, very first time around, could not take him seriously in that role. I don't know what it is. I don't know. For me, he just can't pull off the tough guy. For me, I don't know what it is. No harm to the actor that's playing him, but yes, and I have suffered from this condition all my life, and I am pretty damn sure if anybody ever hears of me getting beaten to death somewhere, it's because I've laughed when I shouldn't have laughed. And whenever he goes into this hardcore thing, it really makes me chuckle. But that's just me. I don't know if anybody else has that same reaction to him. If you do, please feel free to let me know. But at the beginning of the episode, he's sitting with these other two guys, Forrest and Graham, and they're watching and talking about Buffy in the cafeteria at the college, and they're speaking in a way about Buffy that if they were talking about, they're talking about how good looking she is and what they would like to do with her if they got the chance to do with it, and just thinking on it now, and I'm very careful in the way I'm saying that I'm talking about that now, because I do understand the way things are in present day, and some of the stuff these guys say, not just at the opening of the episode, but a few points throughout the episode, is very, if this was going out now, and it's a completely different time from when this here was brought out in television, and some of the things that they're saying in this episode just don't fly anymore. And there'd be a lot of online petitions. I would really think if this episode came out, if this series came out now fresh, and they were going over this stuff, because it's not the sort of stuff that again flies these days. But they're going over this here, these two guys, Forrest and Graham, and Riley, he's kind of passing it off as, he doesn't really want to make fun of her and whatnot. We cut over to Giles and Xander, and Giles, he's sitting sketching, and he's trying to do a sketch of these commandos that Buffy's been rumbling into, and he's like, well, these guys are humans, so Buffy won't need her help with them. So there's a bit of comedy with these two, and this episode where they're feeling left out. Giles is no longer a watcher, and Xander, he's out in the real world, going from job to job, not fitting on anywhere, and they're definitely not fitting on in their eyes to the Slayer and everything she's doing. Buffy turns up again. Giles, he tells her to go patrol, but she's, even though he's not officially a watcher, he's still there to help her. And yes, she's more than happy to take his help as well. But again, just feels more left out than he wants to. But she says she's not going to patrol that night. She wants to take Willow to a party to cheer her up after Oz leaving in the last episode and try and get her out of her funk. And thankfully in this episode we don't get the boo-hoo Willow that much. She's down and out and whatnot, but in that last episode was just go back and check it out. I'm not going to go through that again. So we finally cut over to Spike. We seen him in episode 2 was it of this series. He turned up and he was there at the opening of the episode. I think I was either episode 2, maybe episode 3. He turned up and he was doing his hard man speech, and behind Buffy, she didn't see him, and he got his ass knocked out by a taser and trailed away. So that was like four episodes or so ago. So we haven't got a clue where he's at up to this point, but we do cut to him. He wakes up in this facility where there's all these cages, let's just say, and when I say cages, there's no metal bars on them, so we sell, and there's like a glass in the front of it, but it's electrified, and yes, so he tries to break out, but the barrier knocks him back. A packet of blood is dropped through the ceiling in the Spike's cell. He's going to go and drink it, but the vampire in the cell next to him warns him that the doctors starve the vampires and then feed them drugged blood before doing experiments on them. And this other vampire was the one that got away from Buffy in episode 1, I believe, and he's been there ever since. So Spike doesn't drink the blood. So this all here, and this brings Spike to the conclusion that the Slayer is behind his capture, and he's like, I was always worried about what happened to that, if she ever got funding or whatnot, and this is what it is. So he's putting us all down to what Buffy and the Scooby Gang is doing. He thinks they've got a bit of money behind them now, and they've built some sort of superhero facility and whatnot. Back up on the campus, Forrest asks Parker about Buffy. Of course, Parker's the guy that had the one night stand with her. He brags about the night he had with her, and for me, I can take a lot. It takes a hell of a lot for me to get, I don't want to say offended, but to something that takes me to the point of saying, what a dick. And this guy goes right there very quickly, and what he did to her and whatnot. At that point, Riley punched him. I don't know if he knocked him out or not. We kind of cut out to the outside as they're leaving after this punch. And yes, go Riley at this point. Even though I can't take him seriously as the hard man. Again, if I get beaten to death somewhere, it's because a situation has arose, somebody beats me to death, It's some big guy that just, like Riley is built. He's huge. He's a big guy, muscular. He could easily kick my ass right now, I would say. But if he come up to me with a hard man acting, even in real life, somebody did that there, and they weren't able to carry it off. I think it's just the fact that he's such a pretty boy. You know what I mean? He just, yeah, it just doesn't work. But in this moment, he realizes that he likes Buffy, so he's going off to find her and have a chat with her. Back in the initiative, where Spike's been held at, he's on the floor pretending to be unconscious from the drugged blood, and when the doctors try to get him onto a stretcher to take him for tests, he attacks. He lets this other vampire, his cell, the guy next to him, and give him the warning. But this is only to use him to get out of there, to, aid in his escape. And, yes, this other vampire, quickly gets dusted by these soldiers. So Spike, trying his hardest to get out there. We cut back over to the college dorms, and Riley visits Willow and asks her for her advice and, trying to court Buffy. He's very old-fashioned in the way he says, I've never courted someone like this before. Which again, the words I got there make me not take him seriously as well. Willow, she's still, down in the dumps about Oz leaving, and she questions his motives about eventually listening to some of Buffy's, she questions his motives more or less. Do you really like her? Are you just going to be here to, rip her heart out of her chest and throw her to the dogs and whatnot? But, yeah, she eventually gives him some of Buffy's likes and interests. We cut back over to Spike after he's escaped the initiative. He returns to his lair where Harmony, well, let's just say it's Harmony's lair now, telling her that he's back for good. And, he's just back on the "they want to kill Buffy" sort of thing. The party that night where Buffy was going to take Willow to cheer her up, Willow tries to help Riley flirt with Buffy. Not much success there. He screws it up straight away. Yes, Willow, she gets upset when Oz's bands starts playing on the radio. Somebody was collecting music from some of the people that were playing at the Bronze over the years, and of course Oz's band would be in there, and of course this song starts, and she's not happy. And yes, so Riley gets the song turned off, and they sort of have a little moment together where I screwed up, and she's like, yes, you did. So we cut back over to Xander. He's out doing a bit of patrolling for Buffy. He comes across Harmony. She's crying out in the middle of the woods. She's got this load of stuff sitting in the middle of a little clearing, and she's about to set fire to it. And we discover that, and there's a little fight sequence between Harmony and Xander, which has the score, the action music score playing, but they're sort of like doing the happy slapping game, like neither one of them can fight, and eventually it goes to pulling of hair and whatnot. It's like, I'll stop if you stop and whatnot. So they figure out, Xander figures out that the stuff she's burning belongs to Spike, and like, oh shit, Spike's back in Sunnydale. Yeah, where are we at now? Xander runs looking for Buffy at this point, and he interrupts Riley's renewed attempt to chat Buffy up, to tell her that Spike has returned. Riley is also called away at the same time, and he and Forrest break away from the party, and after passing through several electronic checkpoints, go down a hidden elevator to the underground facility where Spike has been held. So this is the point we discover Riley and a lot of these students are in the initiative, and we get down there. Professor Walsh is waiting, and she informs them that Hostile 17, which is what they have classified Spike as, has escaped, and they all sit up, and Riley gives orders to 3 teams that he sends out all over Sunnydale to find Spike. And this is the point where he does the, right, let's go, let's get him. And he gives the orders and sends these guys all off, and then he gets his gun and he locks and loads, and he gives Professor Walsh out there looking. It's like, ooh, we're going to go and do stuff. I almost fell off my seat at that point. It's exactly the same reaction that I had the very first time I seen it. Just, I don't know, again, no harm to the man that plays him, but it just doesn't work for me. Riley's team aren't out long before they spot Buffy sitting on a bench in the middle of the campus on her own, and of course she's there waiting for Spike to find her. Riley at this point and all the rest of these guys have got no idea that she's the Slayer, and they're trying to plan what they're going to do, get her to safety or whatnot, and like other guys are saying we'll use her for bait. Riley doesn't want to use her for bait, and he gets out of his Action Man gear and his civvies again, and he goes out to get rid of her. Yes, of course, neither one of the two of them know. Again, Riley doesn't know she's the Slayer. She doesn't know he's with the initiative of these soldiers, and they're trying to come up with excuses to get each other out of harm's way. So meanwhile, Spike has found Buffy's dorm through the school's computer system, and inside her dorm, Willow was feeling miserable. She's on her bed. She's been there pretty much the whole episode, other than, I'll go to this party and see what's happening. But, she left, came home, back onto the scratch chair again, and she's sitting there when the door knocks, and she calls out to come in without thinking. She's never not expecting Spike to swagger through the door, but I'm just curious too on how that actually works, because I'm trying to think, did it ever come up in some of the series? It might have come up in the Angel spin-off, but the like of student housing and that sort of thing, would that actually fall under that, let's just say, contract that the vampire can't cross the threshold, because it's like public bedding, that's just public housing or whatever, does it actually count? Does he need the invitation to come through there or not? I'm really not sure. It's just one of those little loopholes where you're sitting watching something and you think to yourself, okay, I can imagine that somebody's in the house that they, that could go either way, really. But it's just one of those little things that pop up whenever you're watching these here, and you kind of think, I wonder. Because, it's not as if they're going to be living there all their lives. They're going to be there for maybe a semester, then they'll maybe end up living somewhere else. So technically it's not their permanent abode, but I digress. So Willow tries to get away. Spike throws her against the bed, jumps on top of her, and he goes to bite her, only to be stopped by an intense pain in his head. Now there's a bit of comedy here, where in the episode, you've got a few points throughout it where it cuts to black for about 5 seconds, and then it continues on. So obviously somewhere in the episode it was left for the shows to be on television, where commercials would be put on. So you had that little cliffhanger moment before a commercial break, let's just say, where he jumps on top of her and he goes to bite her. He goes in for the neck. She's on her own there, helpless, and when we cut back from the black again, she's sitting on the bed, and Spike, he's sitting on just at the bottom of the bed, and he's like, this has never happened to me before. And it's the fact that he can't bite her, but they go into this conversation about, that he couldn't perform sexually. It goes into that conversation where she's like, he's like, this has never happened to me before, I don't know what to say. And she's like, well, maybe you were nervous and whatnot, or was it me? Am I not attractive enough for you? It's a good bit of comedy. That's what I love about Spike and these shows. He is, even though he's the bad guy at this point, even with the changes he goes through, he's always kind of the bad guy to a certain extent. But when you get a bit of comedy with Spike, he delivers it well. And they go through that whole thing, and when he's not expecting it, Willow hits him with a lamp, and runs out just as Riley and his other soldier friends cut the power to the building, and they charge up to the dorm room. They have tracked Spike down. Obviously, there's this chip on his head now that's going to, every time he goes to try to bite someone, it causes him pain, and he can't go through with it. But they can also track him through it. They capture Spike, but why they consider whether to take Willow or not, because they're thinking, okay, potentially she could have been bitten. She might turn, she might not turn, so they need to. Some of them want to take her back to the initiative, but Riley is, maybe we shouldn't, and all. It's just a moment of just indecision that gives Buffy the time to arrive, and she starts fighting with Riley and these other soldiers. Again, she still doesn't know who these soldiers are, and even if Riley's one of them. But as she was heading out earlier in the episode, she was given a flare gun by Xander. It turns out he has a whole bunch of stuff left over from the time that he was the Halloween episode where they fell under the spell where everyone was changed into whatever costume they were wearing, and he was a soldier. And in that episode, he managed to get his hands on a whole load of weapons, so he still has a few things lying about. One of them was a flare gun, and he tells Buffy to take it. If she gets into trouble, shoot off the flare, they'll come running. So, she sets off the flare. This temporarily blinds the soldiers. They'd cut the power, it was dark. They had night vision goggles on, so she fires this thing off. They get a blinding light in their eyes, and they're all fighting, but they can't see properly. Spike breaks free. He uses a fire extinguisher as a shield, and this fills the corridor with smoke. At one point, it busts. He doesn't actually use it spray. He's using it as a shield, and somebody hits it with something, and it breaks open, and like all this spray comes out, all this smoke and whatnot. So these guys are blinded, and now Buffy's in the fight, and because of all this steamer smoke, or whatever you want to call it, from the fire extinguisher, she can't get a good lock on as far as seeing what's going on either. But they're fighting, and this covers up the identity from each other. Spike manages to escape, and having discovered this, Riley orders them to retreat. Back at the initiative, Professor Walsh, he's not happy with what happened with Riley's report on the event, but he confirms that Walsh's inhibitor chip works. Spike can't kill or even harm a human without feeling pain. Thanks to this implant in his head, obviously he was worked on before he woke up at the beginning of this episode. At the end, next day, Riley catches up with Buffy, and they're talking about the night before. He's apologising for, everything. Buffy tells him that he's a little peculiar, which he says that he can live with, and this is the exact thing that he had said about her at the beginning of the episode. I'm not interested in her. Very peculiar. But as he's trying to cover his tracks at the end of this episode, she returns that statement to him. You're a little peculiar. I can live with that. So, this was a fairly good episode. I don't know. It's like in the original run on television, I fell out of the show. And in all honesty, I didn't really watch it fully on television after season 2. If you've been a long listener of this podcast, you'll have heard me saying this before, but season 2 of Buffy was a great season in my opinion. Fantastic. The whole storyline with Buffy and Angel and him going bad and whatnot, and you had Spike and Drusilla in there. It was just a very, very strong season. Season 3 for me was not as good as season 2, but enjoyable. And so far in season 4 here, it's barely on the same level as season 3, in my humble opinion. So it was a great start with season 1, Great intro to the character, built everything up. Then it went to a high with season 2, dropped a little bit with season 3, and dropped a little bit further with season 4. So I kind of dropped out at that point, and it's not the fact that I dropped out because the show was bad, but back in those days I was incredibly busy. But never ever had the pull to actually, Buffy's on, I need to sit down and watch it. Didn't have that from season 2, but great show nonetheless, and we're going to keep going with it on the podcast here every Monday, all been well, even though this episode is a day late. But you could be listening to this in 6 months' time, and it could be a Thursday, so that doesn't matter in the slightest. Right, that's going to do it for this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you had the same opinion on Riley's tough guy act. Was he able to sell it to you? Because he didn't sell it to me in the slightest. And again, if I ever get kicked to death, that's exactly what's happened. Somebody's tried to act the hard man, and I'm like, hey, and then I've got my head kicked in. So, guys, whatever you're doing, do it safely, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.